Around March of 2014, I started talking to this girl on Tinder. She seemed cool and fun, and after about a week of talking, she suggested we meet up in person. She invited me to this coffee shop, and I accepted. However, the day off, she started messaging me, saying she had to tell me something. Her pictures on Tinder weren't actually of her. And yes, she was a guy. He claimed he really liked talking to me, though, and begged me to still meet up with him. Naturally, I declined. I blocked his profile and continued on with life. About a week later, I started talking to another girl. Once again, she seemed cool and fun, and we hit it off. She asked me if I spoke to people on Tinder frequently, and rather stupidly, I told her about my previous encounter with the man lady. Weeks later, I would realise that this new girl was the same girl as the week before. She asked me if I wanted to meet up, and I said sure, as long as it was in a public place. We decided on a cafe, and the next day, I sat at the table waiting. 5, 10, 15 minutes had passed, and she was nowhere to be found. I then peered out the window and saw, from across the street, a man staring at me intently. I looked away, waited a few seconds, and looked back. He was still standing there staring. At that point, I left the cafe, got on my bike, I always biked everywhere, and booked it home. I was definitely a little freaked out, but tried to pull myself together, and reasoned that no one could have followed me. I then deleted my Tinder profile, and things were normal for a few weeks. About 3 weeks later, I started getting phone calls. The numbers all showed up as unknown. I picked up the first few times to some guy breathing heavily into the phone. I was already a little freaked out. After about a day, I stopped picking up any calls unless it displayed the caller's name. I then started receiving texts. At first, they were pretty harmless, calls for attention and begging me to meet in person. It then changed to very sexual texts, until eventually the messages became threatening, and whoever was messaging me started throwing out my family and friends' names and whereabouts, saying she would get them involved unless I answered. Because they were texting me, I could see a displayed number, but when I called phone providers, they told me the number couldn't be traced, and that it was probably a track phone. Great. I waited about 2 weeks, not responding to the text, thinking I should feed the troll. But eventually, it became too much. I started getting upwards of 50 texts and phone calls a day. I would wake up to 10 to 20 texts every morning. I then decided to change my number altogether. The texting and calls stopped for a while, but sure enough, it started happening again. I called my phone provider, asking if they ever give out my number at a user's request, and they said their policy stated that they wouldn't and couldn't unless valid identification was provided. Then, one day, I tried logging into my Facebook, but was denied. Within a day, friends started contacting me asking what the hell I was doing, saying that they were getting terrible messages from my account. In particular, one of my girlfriends was receiving messages about her mum who died years ago. I apologised profusely and told people what was going on. I contacted Facebook and explained the situation, and it helped me access my account again, at which point I deactivated it for a while. Enough was enough. I decided to contact the FBI, explaining what had been going on for over a month now. They documented everything, but told me since I, or any of my relatives or friends, were no immediate danger, there probably wouldn't be anything they could do. At that point, I felt stuck. I thought about hiring a private investigator or a hacker. I decided against it, however, and just hoped it would fade out if I never answered. I left my Facebook deactivated and ignored any texts or phone calls. I never had any trouble at home, but some of my closest friends received the occasional text as well, which weirded us all out. I hated that they got dragged into it. One day, I came home and things felt very eerie. Door unlocked, windows open, and no one home. A strong breeze running through the apartment. I did a check of the place and found nothing else weird, so I locked everything up and just waited for my roommates to get home. It's been almost 7 months now. The calls and texts have more or less stopped. I'll get an occasional text, but at most, one every 2 weeks. At the peak of it, I was receiving almost 100 texts a day. It definitely affected my social and personal life. I became much more wary of people around me and my surroundings. I just felt like I couldn't really focus on anything until this stopped. Work was difficult, though I tried to maintain my composure as best I could. Everything was just weird. Life was weird. I've since stopped using all forms of dating apps and websites. Things are getting back to normal, and at this point, I just want to put it all behind me. I'm moving at the end of this year, so it'll be nice to have a fresh start in a new place. I'm not going to sit here and say all dating apps are dangerous and no one should use them, but definitely cover your bases. Ask more questions before meeting someone. FaceTime them first, Skype, anything. I was naive about it, and I regret it. Be safe, stick close to your friends and try meeting people in more traditional ways. Weird Tinder stalker? Let's not meet. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.